which is the old, so the older, beautiful building that right now is storage. And then at some point there was a discussion, and I don't know if it was a discussion or a rumor, but we'll go with whatever it was. There was a discussion or rumor that said the RMLD themselves don't necessarily need all the space that they have, and if their needs were met elsewhere, there might be the possibility of going to a different location. And so that's part of what the discussion was also, to think about that, and obviously to ask you folks more about that.
Yeah.
And to see what possibilities there are, because that area is really interesting for a lot of reasons. We all know there isn't a whole lot of open space in the town of Reading. There are very few substantial pieces of property that we can use, a couple that we're talking about, but not much else. And I think all of us have looked down there. We see the Station 1, if I'm getting it right, as an opportunity. It's just not doing very much right now. It's kind of an awesome opportunity.
Beautiful parking lot.
Yeah, there's all sorts of great stuff there. Yeah.
With EV chargers, by the way.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know.
And room for more.
But we're not maximizing the opportunity there, and we think that we could.
You should be aware the Station 1 is a historical building.
Yes, yes.
I think that's great,
Well,
yeah.
Historical building, that's a very important thing.
Sure it is.
Yep,
Yeah,
Yep.
well, can I speak, Mark?
sure, please.
Okay, so, I've kind of thought about it, and I'm glad to be here, because I've been pushing Mark and myself to do some economic development. The focus maybe should be on maybe what the building's behind the RMLD. If you could
Yeah.
find a way to come in from the other side, from the back side, you can open up that whole area for economic development. If I'm living on Ash Street, I don't know if I'd be too crazy about people coming in on Ash Street. And even tonight, I drove down Cross Street.
Hey, Daniel, would you be able to open up a screen with Google Maps?
Yeah,
At 230 Ash Street.
let me just respond to Phil just for a second. I view that as an and. And there's potentially an opportunity, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about one of the pieces there also. So the other thing that I came to hear about was that some of the neighbors don't necessarily know of our desire, or they're hearing about it kind of through back channel and not front channel. And if there were to be an effort to do things, obviously we want to be front channel about that. We want to be able to talk to everybody about what's going on. Marlena, why don't I let you speak? You may have had some comments to share here too.
Well, we had a great tour with Colleen and her site manager, facilities manager, in, was it January now?
So it's cold.
Yeah, and whatever it was a long time ago, and she taught us a lot about the different buildings, including their need to house at least 15 bucket trucks, which I hear now are even bigger because some of them have cabs in the back, so that's an important need that I think I just want to say right up front. And since Colleen O'Brien, the general manager, is retiring soon, we want to get as much information from her as possible. Like, she has the relationship with Barba's, that's a big deal in the back. And what order do you think we should talk about this in?
Well, I can give you some, I think, key information. So we have about 40-something vehicles, so we call them rolling stock, plus trailers and stuff. So in one of the visions, there wasn't really room for that. All of the bucket trucks, as you said, they're housed inside. They are hydraulic, so you keep them inside. Barbas warehouse is about 44,000 square feet of inventory. We rent 21,000 square feet from Mr. Barbas at about $13,700 a month, plus 66% of all the utilities. And that's per month. When the vision first started, probably in 2013, 14,
I'm sorry, 20-something thousand feet?
21,000 feet. I can give you I actually made this. I can give you copies of this. This has got like the lease in it and stuff like that. So when the first vision came out, and it was like a 5-story building, a reflection pond, I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. We had to talk about the MAPC didn't realize how much inventory we had and how many trucks we had. So they had to kind of redo it so that there would be some kind of a circulation. And that one was pretty good, but I think it scared the owners because they really couldn't tell the difference between a vision and whether or not the town maybe had a developer to come in and say, we're going to buy all this up. So there's a lot of dysfunction, I think, happened in the back with everyone kind of scrambling, like what's going on, what's going to happen, and like I said, again, there was a misunderstanding of vision. And then, so the second vision that came, Mr. Barbas was, I think, getting ready to retire. And so he wasn't sure he was going to keep that. Now, we don't have any place else to store. We have some equipment that's in operations, which is the building on the far left. And we have pad-mounted equipment that are going to be on racks up at station in North Reading. Now, this new piece of land that we might be buying in Wilmington may have enough room for 10,000 square feet for limited storage, but it's going to be 30 minutes away, so it's not going to be something that's fairly close to Reading. So what I did with Mr. Barbas is we extended the lease for 5 years instead of 2 years to ensure that we had storage in place with a caveat in there that we could reduce it one time by 20%. That will end in May 31st of 2025.
Say that part again.
So instead of the lease being a regular 2-year lease, because he wanted to, basically couldn't decide to stay, go, what was going on, I extended the next lease for 5 years to ensure that we had the 20,000 square feet of inventory. So it's 5 years, it ends now the end of May 2025, and we have a one-time ability that I put in there to remove up to 20%, so the whole bill would go down by 20%.
At any time?
At any time, 6 months' notice.
We have 3 years left.
So we have 3 years left.
Do we have an
So,
option to buy the property?
we didn't have any discussion about that. We are in the process of working to buy land in Wilmington, of which we can, there's a 40,000 square foot A&R plan for that land. We can probably get it down to 10,000 square feet if we're gonna build a couple of batteries with the substation. But that, Wilmington sometimes, especially when there's traffic, it takes us 30 minutes to get to the other side to respond to an outage. So it's not one of those things where you can. So the other point, I had gotten a legal opinion quite a long time ago about actually moving out of Reading.
Should we call it to order now, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order for the RMLD Board of Commissioners now that 4 of us are here. Quorum. All those in favor? Do we have to?
You don't need that.
Okay.
You're in order. You're all set.
Thanks.
So there's a legal opinion about it being in Reading, and you would have to have special legislation in order to move from Reading, so you know that. And that, I put that legal opinion in here as well. So,
Move everything, move substantial.
like if there was, let's say there was no land, but there was land like right on the North Reading, and it was like, oh, can you move the RMLD to North Reading, like right on the border? You would need special legislation to do that, and it explains it all in the.
Good to know. All right.
So I think those are kind of the key points.
So
Right.
just to kind of, on Carlos, there was at one time, there was a potential purchase of the Barbas property in the past.
Correct, that was for $100,000, but I think it was almost
Can we
20
still do
something years
it?
ago. Yeah.
All right, John.
So let me just take it up one level first, and then, Carl, I don't know if that was your hand
I
that
have a
was going up.
question,
Okay, so just to go up one level for a second, and thanks, Chief, for being here too. So a lot of this also spawned from the whole notion of this Eastern Gateway area, and the notion of kind of how big of a plot of land could we be thinking about. Part of that was hinging on what was going to happen with DPW potentially going to Camp Curtis Guild, which at least is sidelined, at least at this point. We'll see if there's any other potential. But even without the RMLD, even without the DPW, there's still a substantial area there and potential opportunities. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get together and start a discussion, see what some steps ought to be to pursue it. So, sorry, I just wanted to kind of walk it. Carla, go ahead, please.
I just had a quick question when Mark mentioned space. Were you referring to office space? Because I didn't go on that tour.
Yes, office space.
So out of 100% of office space, how much space are you utilizing? 50?
Yeah, well, you could definitely lay it out. There's 85 employees, but you have 17 a minimum of 17 trucks that have to be inside because of the
Right,
hydraulics.
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
thinking about
You're talking about what kind of
230,
compacted area,
Yeah, how many square
height-wise.
feet is the building now? That building?
35,000.
yeah, I think it's something.
35,000 is 230 Ash. We had to confirm that, but it's about
So
35,000.
35,000,
Yeah.
and
We probably would
would
need,
20,000 satify you needs at some future time, or at 25, I don't know.
yeah, we haven't put together our staffing plan to support the growth of the load, et cetera.
Right.
But I'm gonna say somewhere in the 65% range of that 35,000.
Currently, but you can't predict the future, right?
Yeah,
No,
so I don't know, call
get
it 25,000, rough.
And back to the building, we lease 20,000 square feet, who is in the other spaces?
I'm sorry, so you've got the 230 Ash is the office space.
Right.
And then the Barber's building
Exactly
behind
that,
us?
right.
Yeah, so there's 21,000 of the 44.
It's a bigger building, so who leases the other space?
So there's two different, there's two other.
Linex, it's, own-
No, no, no,
Barbara's-
tenant.
yeah,
No,
this
no,
other
okay.
A
tenant.
couple, yeah, several.
You got your pick. Okay.
Yeah, one point though, that's the last big room in Reading. That conference room, the one at the
Oh.
police station is now gone,
In 230.
in 230.
Yeah, 230,
That's the
right.
last room in Reading. You know, other than going to the library, which is all small rooms, that's the last big public conference
This
room.
one at RCTV as well.
Well, that's small, relative to that one, I would say.
But this is good because part of our thinking has got to be what do we need
Right.
in terms of space? And if we take something away, how do we deal with it?
Yeah, and just past it, Reading Light did move from a smaller building on Haven Street over to that site a while ago, just to expand.
Right.
And
right.
it seems, that it, just walking in, it seems right size. It's got a kitchen,
Right.
it's got a couple conference rooms, it's got, areas laid out for different people.
Particularly
And
with
it's
storm, when you do storm. support,
And
yeah.
storm duty, right? You need a lot of space, so it's not an atypical setup.
No, no.
Because, so it might seem like, wow, so it's a big building, but it's not really, because when you start talking about operations, people in and out of there, and then it packs out in the storm, and then you might have, an event going on, so.
Right, that's what I'm
it's-
getting at,
yeah.
where in the future, the Eastern Gateway is for you guys to move. And for you guys to move, the office building and a building for the vehicles is a big move.
And the inventory.
Massive.
Right. I mean, I walk the whole property on my own, but, so that's, I think we have to go step by step,
Mhm.
which I think we all agree on. Station 1 is something we can do soon. The credit union building just seems to be used as storage. I know that has no parking, is that used?
No, the credit union's in there.
That's it?
We have a lease with the credit union
Okay, they're
for
in
that small area that they
Okay.
lease up front
Okay.
of the operations building, yes.
Okay.
And the rest of the building is where the trucks,
Yeah.
truck storage, et cetera. And
Right,
then there's-
exactly.
And then there's not much storage left in that building currently. That's why the Barber's building is the stores.
Right. So,
So
yeah.
to just clarify, Carl, I mean, I was under the impression after the tour that maybe the credit building wasn't fully occupied or fully utilized. Is that not accurate?
The credit union is,
know
if you
it's
walk into the credit union, it's only like 2 rooms. That's it. There's only 2 people that work in there. That is the whole credit thing. Everything else that goes around that is all line operations.
That is, yeah.
Wire
Maybe the
bills,
1,500 square
loans,
feet's
yeah,
half used.
it's,
Okay.
It's
yeah.
not a massive building, it's just right on the street.
Yeah, it's not a massive.
Right.
Yeah, but the credit union's only 2 rooms.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah, everything else is inventory.
10% maybe?
Right.
Okay. 80?
And the Barbus building is the one on the Google map with the North Shore Linex?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
That's that big long one across the
Yeah.
back.
Right, so if you had an architect, say, design something with,
Right.
you'd have to study that, is my point.
Yeah, no.
For the ergonomics of it.
I
You could
totally get it,
definitely
no.
consolidate it, but,
No, what Mr. Coulter's saying makes sense, right? You don't want to duplicate that exact building, even if it's 5,000 square feet less or 5,000 square feet more, it's still a good sized footprint, right? And we don't have anywhere in Reading.
Oh, right, right.
Currently, or in the future, that we could satisfy
Yeah.
that. So that's why, I'm not saying these conversations would be a waste of time, but let's deal with what's in front of us. Then that's a vision, right? It's a long-term vision. It was at least 10 years out, if I recall, with the presentation last year, at least.
The whole thing, I think.
The whole thing,
Yeah.
right. I mean, it was a big, beautiful ideas, but
Yeah.
to execute is a lot
Yeah.
of moving parts.
But I think, so we've got kind of 2 purposes. One is to kind of have that vision in terms of where it can be, all the different pieces, and then to get much more specific about, are there pieces in the near term, for example, Station 1? and, you know, what else could happen. And as the community is going to be potentially considering other needs, other building needs, you know, it may be that things should go faster in one direction if there's an opportunity there, or not. For example, would a senior center make sense in that building? Would that accommodate a lot of the needs of a senior/community center? I have no idea. I'm just kind of lobbing that out as a potential opportunity. Or, frankly, would it be much better off developing it in a much broader economic development footprint? I think those are on the table. But to your point, Carlo, I would suggest that we think about kind of the pieces and where we can take some action more immediately, and then figure out what would be required, even if we were going to pursue the building, thinking about space needs over time, what those might look like, which would give you an idea of, hey, what would you need if there were to be an opportunity to move, or if there was an opportunity to do other things. So,
Flexible.
Well, just one item, you know, just keep it, whatever you put in there, just remember hours of operation, right? It's a 24/7
24/7
operation. So, if senior center, okay, you know, 8 to 5, you know, that seems like a nice fit. But if you wanted, you know, think about moving somebody in there.
Like a tenant.
Like a tenant.
Yeah.
You know, that residential, that would be, I would think that would be a difficult sell. Because now the first thing you do is get a complaint. You know, there's loud trucks. People, there's a lot of noise, you know,
well.
it's just, so I think you have to limit.
those are the territory.
But yeah, right. I just think-
And I think making a list of kind of, you know, concerns, and that can help frame the opportunities in terms of what we can do. But, you know, look, Eugene, I don't know if you want to comment or just want to observe, but in terms of thinking about Eastern Gateway activities, I mean, this was a big vision in terms of what could happen with the space. And again, we don't have a lot of big spaces in this town, like very few. So let's just figure out what the kind of the best use could possibly be. I would suggest, if it makes sense, maybe think about Station 1 first and what we can do with that. But I think we just need to make sure we're thinking about it in this broader context before we kind of have all sorts of stuff going on with Station 1, and then we say, oh shoot, that just destroyed the potential to do anything else.
Yeah, it's Mark, thanks, and by the way, sorry I'm a few minutes late, but I think, yeah, Station 1 is one of the two pieces of low-hanging fruit. And I think no matter what else happens, I don't think there would be a scenario where you tear the building down. So finding a good use for it through a planning process followed by an RFP process. You know, the investment was already made by utility to do a nice job with that parking lot renovation, which has chargers. So that's all done now.
That's good.
And it's paid for obviously by ratepayers. So now you're ready for a planning, maybe a 6-month planning process. Okay, what would go in there? What type of business or what use could go? And then issue an RFP, I think would be the way to do that. And then you can always reject an RFP if you don't like what comes in for uses. And people could say, what would they need to do a part of the renovation? Because I understand it's a lot of work from what Colleen has said over the years. You know, it's not cheap what needs to be done in there. So that is one, and it seems to me like it wouldn't need to be contingent on other pieces because you have the parking lot, you have the building. And all of this would be subject to, you know, utility operations. And I think, from what I've heard, to defer to the management, that there is capacity to allow that, like there's room in the parking lot, but that would be part of the process. I would put another thing on the table, and this is just me, but another near term could be in 230 Ash Street. Others may disagree, but it is a big building. That conference room is only for us commissioners. We obviously didn't use it for almost 2 years. And even when we use it 4 hours, you know, a month kind of thing. Yeah. That room with the front lobby, a nice secure separated access just to the big conference room with the audiovisual already in there, seems to me like it would not, again, deferring, interfere with utility operations to be able to adaptively use that for different types of uses. Parking lot, main entrance, lobby, handicap access into the room. It's a very big room, as you know. And I don't know if others disagree. We can have our meetings in the cafeteria. I got the nice new deck out back now.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest differences with that building, and I think that's a great idea, I mean, we'd have to put new locking mechanisms on and
Right.
isolate, as you say. Because I think it's a wonderful place for shared community use. But unlike say the Reading High School that has if you talk to Joe Huggins, has a whole list, a price list for renting out
Yeah,
everything, they do have custodians that are around the clock. We don't have that. We have two gentlemen who are They're not custodians, we have a cleaning company, and they're maintenance workers, so they're not there all the time. So there's a little bit of a difference that we would have to operationally change
Correct.
with the union contract in order to have people there.
What union contract?
The union contract of the person right now who's responsible to come in on
Oh,
the
yeah.
evenings when you're having meetings there. If-
Oh, so that somehow interferes with this guy who's supposed to clean after our meetings? What if we don't even make a mess at the meetings?
It's not really cleaning, it's just that
Shutting down the building, you know,
he comes in, opens the building, shuts down the
Let's put it on the
building.
list of concerns.
It's a fact.
All right, so it's a thing, it's a thing we have to work through.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's no real renovations to be done, and and yes, and I think also because there's 4 towns, there has to be a lease payment from town of Reading to the light plant to take care of the cab side of that. That we're not just doing this for one town.
Right, yeah, only
Mark.
balance.
Mark,
Huh?
can I ask a question?
Please.
So, I don't know if this is putting the cart before the horse, but what about hiring a commercial real estate agent to harness all the needs for the business to see about them moving elsewhere, so that we don't field all those questions?
I think we can't field all the questions.
Exactly. At all.
Yeah, I don't know if I know, I don't think everyone knows me, I'm Jean Delios, the Assistant Town Manager. Yeah, so as a couple people mentioned, we've had 2 studies of this area. One back in 2015. We had an economic development action plan that specifically focused on this area behind RMLD and did visioning work and invited all the neighbors to a meeting in 2015. We did a mailing to the entire neighborhood down there and invited them. And that was the ideas that I think Colleen was referring to. We then went back with the Eastern Gateway with architect David Gamble in 2019. And that's, all this information is on the website if anyone's interested. And we focused specifically on this area. We called it the Yard. And we said, what if industrial uses that were tucked behind could be reused for something new, like a brewery, and we had bike paths, and we had all these ideas that we put out there, and we met with each and every property owner multiple times to discuss redevelopment, to discuss breathing new life into this area. And we even met with the owner of One General Way to make sure we were thorough. And we had an economic development summit where, again, we invited the entire neighborhood to come and discuss this idea. So at least a handful of times we've invited the neighborhood, we've thrown ideas around, we've put up some solid architecturals for what could be back there. The idea of low-hanging fruit at the power building, we looked at that, and I think it's about 3,000 square feet. So, I'm not sure how, now obviously maybe there's a way to expand, do an addition or whatever, but to take that building and adaptively reuse it, assuming there's no major environmental issues, which I think Colleen has said that it's pretty clean, and we want to just verify that there isn't any 21E or anything else down there. But assuming that you're going to have about 3,500 square feet the last time I looked at it. So those are some ideas, but I would encourage everyone to go to the website, and if anybody wants to email me, I can send you the links directly if it's easier.
Yes, please.
What's it called on the website? Eastern Gateway? Is that what you'll look for?
There's 2 places you can go, the Economic Development Action Plan, and then the Eastern Gateway,
Okay.
and it's specifically referenced as the Yard.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
One question,
Yeah.
is the beer they're gonna make light beer?
Choice. We believe in choice.
Gene, you were talking about clean, were you talking about Station 1?
Station 1, yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. So we recently spent $35,000 to encapsulate the walls on the main floor because the silica that comes out from between the bricks becomes dust. There's also lead paint in there. So it's all been cleaned and encapsulated, but that is a separate than the report that was sent out from 2011 or 12 to the Historical Society that's like 400 pages long, about what it would take in order for it to become formal storage versus human occupancy. So there's a large study on that. I gave it to Fidel.
I read it all.
They have that, but the cleaning that we just did is to make sure that the employees that were going in there, we do have a boiler in there that is connected to the building that they have to get into, so we had to encapsulate the walls, and you still need a dust mask if you go probably into the basement. But that's a different type of cleaning. We are working really hard to get all of our records out of there and probably send them, we have to send out for an RFP or something to get the records sent out for the paper ones that we have to keep so that it's not collecting dust and to move that out. Other than that, there's really not much stuff left in there, so we'll be vacated from there. We're in the middle of an exit strategy. But I just wanted to clarify clean, because I don't want to give the impression that it's
ready
just
for
cleaned up
walk-in.
for
It's
people
not
to-
ready to go.
Yep.
So
Chris?
you really do need to have a 21E site assessment for occupying the building.
21
Yes.
Site assessment. Chris, go ahead, sorry.
Thanks, Mark. Going back real quick to the legal opinion that we can't relocate somewhere else, is that 100%, 50%? Like what portion can you not buy a building in Wilmington and store some stuff there?
It just says you need special legislation if you want to consider it.
But like, what, can you only do stuff in Reading, is what I'm saying? Can you buy a building in Wilmington right now without legislation?
There's two sentences, if you'd like me to read it to you. Based on our research, the purchase of real property outside of the town of Reading likely would require RMLD to obtain special legislation. The state does not expressly authorize the RMLD or the town to purchase real estate for admin offices and operations outside of town limits. Statutory schemes governing the authority of light plans in towns only authorize the purchase of real property within the town of Reading. Although light plants have statutory authority to acquire distribution, transmission, generation facilities and equipment located outside of municipal limits, such authority would not extend to real estate, particularly where property would not include electric facilities, generation stations, substations, to meet RMLD's franchise obligations. So those are kind of, it's legalese, it's 3 pages long, but
Just an
that's,
ask.
Yeah.
so you'd have to go through it. I wanted to get that answered. I think I
Yeah,
asked
that's the first
Yeah.
time I ever
asked
heard that,
this-
thank you.
Yeah, I did this back in 2019 when we were talking about it before, just in case, when Camp Curtis came
So
up before.
let me talk about history here now.
Sure.
None of you in this room have lived through the outside towns voting to withdraw from the district. I have. That's what resulted in the negotiation between myself and the general manager at the time, and resulted in the 20-year agreement. To relocate, a facility outside of the town, could be a dangerous thing. That's all I want to say.
And there's not any guarantee that it would necessarily have to be outside of the town, especially if we're
Right.
talking about 20,000 square feet. It's not that we have tons of those spaces around, but who knows?
Well,
Sorry,
I
Chris,
just had one other follow-up. So speaking of the smaller of the two buildings over there, Fidel and I met with one of the owners of Night Shift Brewery and walked the property with them and did all that, and they seem to be very open to testing like a beer garden, et cetera, out there during the summer and whatnot, just to proof of concept kind of thing. The initial reaction was they weren't looking into expanding, et cetera, and then after they saw the building and all that, a couple hours later is when we got the email that they're looking to do just the pilot test, et cetera. So it seems as if they're not interested turned into very interested after seeing the building. For me, it was like just seeing the ceilings in there and everything, just being that high and everything. It's very, very unique, and it would kind of fit that kind of theme that you would kind of need in there to really open up. So I don't know if Fidel wants to add anything extra to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that the power station building is the one that is the lowest hanging fruit. Of course, those are the details, the
the walkthrough was purely a favor, right? I mean, like it was him coming in and saying, if this was available, what would happen? Because he's a friend, and he sits in the Brewers Guild, right, which is a network of breweries, and I was very surprised with how positive it was received. Obviously, I had a conversation with Colleen about, you know, we would have to negotiate parking, you know, see how the hours of operation overlap, right? I mean, but with a brewery at least, or a restaurant, it is usage that is the opposite of the office space, at least, right? It would happen at night. It would happen, you know, on the weekends where the admin offices at least are not in operation, right? So the I guess all to say that it was simply a fishing expedition to see if how people would be open to pursuing an RFP on a commercial lease for something, a brewery, a restaurant, you know, or something like that. And so what we heard is that people would be interested. We didn't talk about, you know, lease terms or dollars or any of that stuff. It was very high level.
So to Bob's point, we want to transform the property.
Yeah, well, is it just, what space you look at? You look at the whole property, you're just looking at?
Just station one.
Just station one, just this one,
Just
okay.
station one. And the one big thing, the two big question marks, right, is the parking, how much parking would be available, and the hours of operation, right? Those two. I think, and those are things that you negotiate, you know, once an RFP goes out, once you know, you pick a partner or whatever, right? Like, those are details that I think we could figure out if we agree that it's worth pursuing.
Did that come up a lot, Colleen, with the conversations with the residents, that how they would feel about a restaurant? I'm sure.
I didn't talk to them about a restaurant. Like I said, the visions that are online, I think in 2015, was it 15? That we had all the little boards and people put their sticky things on the boards. That was at the senior center, correct? We had one at the senior center.
We had one at the senior center, but I think the one that we had in October.
We had one in RMLD cafeteria.
Yeah, that was
and then
June
we had
one.
one in the select board meeting, so there's been three.
Great, yep.
We didn't specifically talk about that. I mean, I'm not sure where the other, I mean, you can take the operations building, tear it down and build it back up. Put us in, you know, I don't know what the height restrictions are over there. Like I said, I liked the MAPC one with the 5-story with the trucks underneath.
Yep.
And the reflection pond and the running trails was quite beautiful. You can still have a brewery there.
And electricity.
But
Yeah, they really go well together.
the operations building was torn down and you had multi-story, multi-use, right, retail on the bottom and residential at the top. But you could always tear down the operations building and put us in a multi-story. Try to get more of a unified,
More use out of it.
more use out of a footprint that way. It's still
Physical footprint.
Are you saying this building?
this building,
You mean-
yeah, operations.
That one.
Yep.
Not
To
230
the-
Ash.
No,
To
the
the
one to
left.
the left.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's 240.
It's a huge footprint, it's just, it wasn't designed, I mean, other than where
The
the
one to
trucks
the
are
left.
stored.
Yeah.
I'm calling it the credit union. The credit union building. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Carl.
Thank you. I would love the idea of a brew pub, you know, a tree house just came all the way from Charlton and bought the Tewksbury Country Club.
So
That is gonna be off the, you know, they get the parking, I heard they're keeping the golf course. That facility is massive. So I don't know how they're gonna reconfigure it. It's obviously already built out, but not for a brewery. But all we talk about on the board, on our board, is space, lack of space. And 3,000 square feet, give or take, you know, whatever it is, you know, and if I was night shift or Lord Hobo, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come here, I got a beautiful historic building, it's gonna cost me $1 million to build out. Guess what I'm gonna want? A 20-year lease.
Yeah.
So if you want to give someone a 20-year lease because they want to protect their investment, then that gives us less value as far as if 10 years from now things happen in the back, then we have a tenant that we want to get rid of and we can't. But that's just that, forget that. But I think we have to look at highest and best use for the town first, in my opinion. As much as I like the revenue and the meals tax revenue and bringing people to the area, but, you know.
So I think this is one of the reasons why it's important for us to think about this kind of in total as opposed to just piecemeal, because we could get ourselves something good in the short term that bites us in the long
Yeah,
term.
exactly.
We don't really want to do. But if we're thinking about this whole thing, we see what the pieces could look like. I want to see how to get on the invite list to this activity pilot, but
It'll be on Facebook. No, you can't, you won't see it.
actually I can now. It's on the town website. So they're getting better and better. Karen.
So Mark, I just wanted to piggyback on Dave's suggestion, because the other low-hanging fruit is an underutilized conference room
Yeah.
when we desperately need meeting space. So could we as a group come out of here with some action items could we take that's the quickest, easiest thing. We could sort of just start using space and make it happen when we need it.
So can we ask this question? From RMLD point of view, what would be required in order to understand better how we could utilize the conference room? We, the town of Reading.
I think we just have to isolate the locks and so that it's certain areas. We'd have to go back. We did have vandalism in the cafeteria, but we could have better door locking mechanisms to the control room and stuff. I mean, it's all doable, and I could talk to Janet about the union issue. Just what would be required for staffing for that, because we don't have, it's not a school custodian. So
Yeah, so cleaning, scheduling,
Right, scheduling.
and securing, it sounds like,
Yeah.
and compensating for whatever.
Yeah, some kind
expenses
of
we
nominal
have.
lease payment so that
Yeah.
this is
Right.
seen as fair to the four tenants.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when we do this in any other part of the town or school building, there is a custodial requirement for people as they're renting space, and that's built into a fee structure.
Yeah.
So it's not, this isn't new, it just has to be accommodated. Anything else from your perspective?
For the conference room?
Yes.
just the conference room. Someone else said cafeteria. Are you?
Conference room,
Just
conference room.
Just the
No,
AP
yours too.
room.
Yeah.
So
So like you said, accessing through the front door, isolating just that one door right into the conference
Yeah,
room,
I
kind of
just
like you
think
do for your
you're right.
meetings.
putting like fobs on the doors or something.
Yeah, we can.
But there's no, well, nope, there's a bathroom in the lobby. So yeah,
there's
it
that,
would
and
just have to be redesigning the doors.
ADA compliant
It is
bathrooms
ADA
in the library, and
compliant.
the lobby, I believe so.
And a lobby into the, so.
Yeah.
So board members, would we be comfortable asking RMLD to find out what those costs would look like? Is that cool?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
How long do you think it would take to just get that memo written up? To like outline what that would be?
You can write up a memo before Friday or a couple of days. Like I said, it's more of, Stephanie.
Huh? No, it's just like,
He was thinking faster.
no.
Oh, it wasn't.
After a decade of, then suddenly it's 2 days.
No, I think this is odd. That would be great. So please, so if we can ask you to do that, that would be great. What's kind of next on the list? So if conference space is kind of the easiest and huge benefit potentially, that's one. What would be next? Does it relate to building one?
So, I mean, what Dave suggests is actually very interesting. Would everyone in this room be open to putting an RFP for the power station building and seeing what comes back? You know,
So let's just agree for 1 second. So is the next best space to look at in Station 1? I'm just kind of going around the room. Does that seem like the next place to look at? Or is there something else that's kind of, no-brainer, here it is?
It seems so, but I think that would be it. But I think we first would need a few months of a sort of a planning process to think through what is in that RFP. What types of uses do we think we want, and would we be asking for in the RFP? And also with the brewery thing, I think as long as there's utility operations there, we've been a lot of years of like the drug and alcohol policy is that it doesn't really mix with the utility operations.
Very well.
So I get it about the space.
For
Yeah,
police, you mean?
isolation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very serious issue, and Colleen's been really out there on
Yeah.
safety and the
Look what-
policy, you know, so we don't want to just put a,
Yeah. There have been incidents in the control room, which is
Yeah.
right across the street from that building.
so I just think, I mean, I get it, it's an interesting idea, but, no, it's fine, it's just, that wouldn't be the thing we want people to say, oh, we want to put a brewery there. It's like, that would be one of the many things we would think about, that you
Yeah.
could think about an RFP, and that, to me anyway, that would be contingent on if we moved, but management may disagree, I don't know.
So let's go back to Marlena's idea. Is this something that a commercial real estate agent could help with in kind of observing the building and what's going on, give us ideas, estimates, assessments that would be required, just to get an idea of that? And then probably what we need to do pre-RFP is have a discussion amongst us again about, you know, what are we thinking? What are the possibilities to make sure that an RFP would include?
Can I just jump in on the environmental piece? I don't know if everyone in the room is familiar with the 21E site assessment, but I think that I've spent a lot of years doing real estate development at the MBTA, and we had a lot of similar buildings like this. And the first thing we would do is do our due diligence before we made a piece of property available. And so a Phase 1 21E site assessment would be, in my opinion, an important first step. And based on the results of the Phase 1, that may or may not trigger going on to a Phase 2. And the
Liability-wise, that's great.
the important thing to remember is once you start, you know, you start identifying issues, you have a responsibility.
To fix this, right?
So I just want
Right,
everybody to be really crystal clear on that one.
What we can ask for.
Excuse me, Jay, I think if you're going to sell the building, if we're doing our own site assessment to know what's under the ground, like what's airborne, everything else can be taken care of. With the Phase 1 and the Phase 2, you know, Phase 2, obviously you're boring into the ground, so that's for oil, for chemicals, whatever it is. But if we're not gonna go sell the building, go for financing, I'm not 100% sure, but I think if you find out it needs to be remediated, it's up to the property owner to remediate it. But if there's no sale, I don't know if that's, you have to remediate it at the moment. That I don't know.
Okay. I was around when we purchased, when that building was purchased, whatever it is now, that property.
Which one, 236 or?
That whole property, because I go all the way back to Haven Street. I've been around long enough.
Yeah, exactly, right.
If you see the pictures, you'll see my car.
Yes.
But I go back to Haven Street, and when we purchased that property where the offices are, the operations are, there was hazardous waste on that site, because I don't know how many people know, but that was basically, there was a cold, that was where the trains turned around, the train table down there. And we found coal on the property. So I think you're gonna probably find something.
Was that remediated? Was that?
Yes, it was remediated.
Back then? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, had to be at
That
that
was a long
point.
time ago, but
Yeah, but and the property was bought, so there was hazardous waste on that property.
yeah. Yeah, that'll come up in the Phase 1.
Yeah.
So you're surprised, you'd be surprised to see it, find it again.
What if we take an action item to consult with town council about your question, Carlo, on with the 21E, not on a sale-related topic? What happens if something is found? So clearly, if we do find something and there are people that are going in and out of the building, that's going to have an impact, right? Because there are people using it now for inventory.
Well, if it's under the ground, there's really no impact.
When you, sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a good idea. I think we should just check with her. We've been finding lots of stuff. We find arsenic in substations, we
Yeah.
find lead paint, and more arsenic, and all kinds of good stuff. so-
PCBs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You gotta be
Yeah.
very,
We're gonna find
you
them.
gotta be, you find it, you gotta fix it.
There is some there, it's embedded in the concrete and floor.
Well, then that's proves out. So,
If you're not disrupting it, like, again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an environmental expert, but banks won't loan you money if the ground's dirty or there's any environmental impact. If we're not asking for money, we just want to know for our own, for the town's purposes.
What's our liability?
Again, I'm just saying, I don't know if we have to remediate it. If it's airborne, yes. If it's below the ground, it's already below the ground now, and we're using the building. So I'm just trying to think logically.
We're just clarifying, we're not really using the building, it's very minimal.
Well-
But it's not an office space, not an operation space.
No,
There's a
right.
boiler in there that we use, we're basically We go in there very rarely.
Right, no, I understand that, but like I
No,
said.
just, but I mean, just in terms of when you set the stage.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody says you're going in and out of that building on a regular basis, then there will be some
Well,
plan.
we're looking to, if we're leasing it, right?
I'm with you. Just
we're gonna
so you
use
guys know
space.
what we do with it
Yeah,
today.
we want seniors in there and there's
Like
stuff
the
we can.
storage for 4 cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then,
So I think the first order of priority is going to be to understand what we'd be engaging in, what the concerns would be. So I think that's a town council starting point. Then 21E, I'm guessing that's north of $10,000, right?
Not phase one, no.
Not phase one?
Unless they jack it up for the towns. Phase one's a couple $1,000 privately.
Oh. Okay.
It depends what you're asking for in phase one. There may be some data already.
Sorry, 3,000 to 4,000. 2,000 was the old price. 3,000 to 4,000, again, private transaction.
We can,
The
yeah, we can
towns-
probably find out.
Yeah, I don't think it's, phase two is the big one. 20 to 30,000. Truly.
So anybody that would be considering using the space anyway would be asking us if we have the information and/or they'd undertake doing it themselves. Right. So, you know, if we're considering it, let's maybe walk toward it a little bit first, go slow, and see if that's possible, see what we can learn. Great.
One other thing, if I could jump in. We've been discussing, the economic development team and myself have been discussing every fall, we do an economic development summit. And we've been discussing and working with Erica from RMLD about hosting something at the cafeteria to invite the neighbors and get some more community input into these ideas. So that's tentative for October 5th. Right? I think neighborhood involvement is crucial, as crucial as in 21E. A lot of people are residents in that area, and before any ideas get explored, I think their voices need to be heard.
Mark, can I just ask you about the Camp Curtis thing that you meant at the beginning? Is there space over there?
So there's space,
Yeah.
but the issue is what we could actually do there.
So is it
Fidel,
split
any
between
updates?
state and federal, or is it?
So the governor at one point actually said, I encourage the town of Reading, and the commandant was involved, and I think the feds maybe too, and said, I encourage this use. We would like it to happen. But then things got stuck.
Yeah, so my understanding is that they offered a site to Reading that was essentially a wetland, and it fizzled out.
They droned it, excuse me, with a drone, like this is what you can have. Like, you can't do anything with this.
Well,
So it wasn't usable.
but it's right on Haverhill, and if I remember correctly, it was about 1 acre of upland, and so then I've been asking, is this a battery storage site? Is this a battery storage site? Because, yeah, it seems kind of small for a lot of other things, but I didn't know. So if you're saying 10,000 square feet is what typical battery storage, I don't know if it's connected, but
Yeah, and it can wetlands be
it's
used that way.
small. It's really small, but
Yeah.
it is right on Haverhill.
So we were really encouraged that it was going to be possible until that survey came back and said, no.
But is there any planned non-use of buildings that are there now in their future?
Not that was offered up that I heard.
Yeah, what
So they were highly encouraging us to use some
Yes,
wetlands? That's
yes,
awesome.
yes.
Well, we thought it'd be better than that. We thought it'd be better than that.
Yeah, we didn't know it was wetlands until.
That's a
Oh,
dust
he
settle,
didn't,
yeah.
the governor must not have known.
No.
either.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
I think you like the idea.
Yeah.
Everybody loved
There's
the
a lot of
idea.
land.
but that's not just practical.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, which is not, okay.
So if that's kind of a couple of next steps on Station 1, starting with town council and then understanding what's required for this phase 1 site assessment. That sounds like that could be a plan for that, and maybe then this group could get back together. Colleen, I'm thinking about some of the things that you can bring. You've talked about the Barbas relationship in particular, and we probably as a group ought to think about, as part of the yard or whatever, what we'd be interested in. And we know the 100 grand's probably off the table, but what might be possible? What are their plans? How could that coincide with our plans? What does that do to that space for us? In other words, is that like, whoa, that's what we need versus eh? And I think it's whoa. that's a big deal. So I'd love to see how to kind of pursue that and work with your relationship with them to kind of get a discussion going.
He's very personable. Like I said, I think he is probably, back when these visions were being done, was probably wanted to move to help the town, but I think, you know, it's all domino effect. I think he was just waiting.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm sure he'd be willing to sit down and have a chat, but I think he'd probably ask the same type of questions, like what's the bigger plan?
Carl?
Well, sure, should we approach him now to offer to buy it? We have nothing to lose.
And/or,
Ask if he's interested in selling it.
yeah, I'd love to
At
get,
the end of the lease, or,
yeah,
At the end of this, yeah.
yeah.
or, you know.
Well, we only have 21 out of 44, so keep in mind, we only have part of the.
Right, we don't know
Yeah.
what the lease is for the other part of the building, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna eventually run out at some point.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the sooner we approach it, the better.
right.
Yeah. No, yeah.
What?
From staff's point of view, what are your thoughts, Gene, in terms of the discussion and the potential for the yard and what we might be able to?
Well, I think we have to identify what the neighborhood is gonna be supportive of. I think that's enormously important,
Yep.
because connectivity out is a big issue that we've heard from them that they're worried about. It's good for economic development, but it's not good if you're a resident on Ash Street. You have cars coming in and out through Walker's Brook, and that's why it's set up that way, I think. So there's a trade-off there, and I don't know the answer, but I know.
There's also concerns with Cross Street, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Because
the
that's a
intersection is so
That's a
tough.
cut-through.
also.
Terrible.
And that's a very narrow street to
Yep.
start out with.
yep.
So, you know, if you
You're
do
right.
have an economic, I was just invent some of those, the people who live on Cross Street, too.
We've invited Cross Street, Brook Street, we have the database of
Right.
everyone in those streets. I'm very familiar with the streets because I don't live far from there.
Unless you make it a one-way going toward Main Street.
Yeah, so, but I think that with
Yeah.
civil engineering, we can have that discussion in terms of what's gonna happen. I think that the real issue is that space really interesting to us, yes, no? And if the answer is yes, then we should talk about what we can do.
By space, you mean the whole lot?
I'm thinking the whole lot, but specifically discussions that could take place, kind of, again, leveraging Colleen's connections while she's still here for, how much longer? 30 days?
6 weeks.
40 days?
June 30th.
Yeah, so not too long. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I don't see what the downside is to approaching them now and just getting the portion of the building, whatever. The neighborhood thing isn't going to change because we're still going to put our vehicles there. So I don't see what the downside is, because if we're paying $13,000 a month in rent, like, why not just buy the building and then lease it out to the existing people that are already there? I can understand if all of a sudden you're going to put a amusement park there and have like different vehicles coming through and all that, but if we just have the same setup, then all we end up saving is the money that we pay monthly. And why would we want to pay somebody else's rent? So I don't see the downside to just asking and just, maybe he doesn't want to sell and that's the end of it. Or maybe he is, and then we'll see what happens.
I mean, I think that if he might want to have a notion of what we're thinking about, and at this point, it's not fully formed, but, you know, we do have the notion of the yard as kind of a possible structure, but at minimum, to Chris's point, why are we kind of renting it? And maybe a different opportunity.
And the other big thing is, since they're gigantic vehicles, where else in Reading are they going in? We don't have a plan for it. I mean, I understand we're talking about it now, but where are they going anyway?
Want to build something on an acre on April Street?
Wetland?
30 house
One acre
trucks
to
over
start?
there.
But not on
By the
that.
Burbank.
Yeah, so how do we want to pursue this? What makes sense in terms of how to pursue this?
The environmentals, you already have that, right?
Yeah, so we've already have that. So this is more kind of the warehouse space we're talking about now. Right, that's what Barbas owns?
Oh,
Yes. Frost as well.
Barbas owns a couple of parcels back there, so when we were talking to Barbas, that was where we were talking about having the brewery, which is why I was thinking about the importance of having the neighbors involved.
Yep.
In fact, his
They won't like this.
son think and daughter both are in that business.
What business?
In the Barbas?
I think they're
Space.
either in
The dad's business.
brewery business
Oh.
or the winemaking business.
So if we were to kind of initiate the discussions, we'd ask Colleen to kind of warm that up a little bit.
That would be-
Maybe with Fidel, and does the board want to, the boards want to, certainly the select board, appoint one of our people to kind of take point to start? Maybe Carla?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Does that work?
How about Phil or Bob?
Yeah, I mean, the utility doesn't own those parcels, right?
Yeah, but I think, look, this is a good
Yeah.
activity for us to be together,
Yes,
talking
it is.
about what we're thinking about.
Agreed.
So appreciate you, everybody coming down to do that. Okay.
Free tastings.
Yes. Ice cream, it's ice cream manufacturing. That's what
So maybe next meeting we go for ice cream.
That would be
If Carlo and I got together and we figured out a funding source for 21E site assessment, what would be the next step to get RMLD to say it was okay? Does that require an action by the board, or we're going on RMLD property and hiring
Yeah, I don't know.
a licensed site professional to go in and do an assessment? I don't know what kind of approval process it would
We
require.
could just do it maybe.
Yeah, I think the board could just vote that.
Yeah.
I think the board could just
It's trivial, right?
We're gonna do it now?
Should we, or is there, do we need to think
We're in a
about it?
meeting.
Okay.
You can make a motion.
Do we need an agenda?
Right, are we talking,
Greg has a
are we
question.
talking about the liability of the town doing the assessment of the building, and then the liability lands with the RMLD?
Well, yeah, we don't know. We have to identify that.
Okay, can I,
Let's do that
Alright.
may I
first. Step
have,
zero.
Can we, and
Like-
Mark,
yeah, may I
can
have,
can we, I want to hear what Colleen has to do, but can we do it now? Because some people have to leave.
Oh,
When is our next meeting? Next
No,
week, right?
Did we say
So,
vote?
okay, so
Monday
pass
the
it
agenda?
Monday.
Okay.
Monday.
Why don't we do it next week? Let's not, if there's
Yeah.
anything we need to think about, we'll
With
think
an
about
answer of
it.
liability before that.
Okay.
yeah,
So-
you gotta make sure you know what you're getting into.
Exactly,
before
yes,
you
right,
make
right.
any
So
actions.
before people are going to need to leave, is there anything else that we want to make sure that we at least address and/or set a meeting, the next meeting?
I do
Check.
think, and it's maybe further along down the line, but the commercial real estate professional, especially one that has some experience with something, with a space like this, has some ideas that are pretty specialized, but otherwise kind of undefined, and needs a wide-ranging background, is a good idea.
So I've got kind of in order, town council, RMLD vote to allow 21E, once we've understood things. A first phase, was it? Phase one? 21E potentially, to see what that would take. If things continue to move, decide, does it need phase two or commercial real estate, whichever the order is, one then the other, assuming everything still is continuing on the path. But now we've got some costs, some substantial costs to be dealing with at that point. So now we've got to talk, if we're looking at 20, 30 grand, that's a larger issue to talk about. Okay, so there's a plan on that, there's a plan on Barbara's discussion, there's a plan on conference space. Anything else we need to hit really fast?
are you asking me also to come up with a number of what we would need operationally?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That would be great also. So now we're talking about admin building,
Just saying, if it's already there.
admin space, needs, plan.
Storage.
Okay, do the whole thing. So admin,
Yeah, I mean,
ops,
We're
storage.
flexible to do something different. We want the town to grow. We just have to make sure we can support the growth.
Fair enough. I think, Carl?
Okay.
Mark?
Would you guys know the answer, maybe not? If you guys hire the environmental company, would that be an RFP process, or you just make some phone calls? You say, give me, for me,
I want to look at there's a report that was done in 2011. There was some environmental study. I just want to go back to that. It's
Right.
like 300 pages long, so I want to
Right.
go back and look at that.
It'll be a summary.
See where we
page.
are.
And then I'll just find out from that, either we already have it, we need it updated, we already have the liability assumed from that. Let me just double check
Yeah,
that.
it's a good idea.
And if we're gonna not meet till next week, that gives me a couple of days. And then
Yeah.
get Dave's thing, we're gonna get that done too, so
Yeah.
the locks
What-
and stuff.
Oh,
The conference,
Conference room.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
the conference room.
Mark, you, at the next meeting when we vote on the 21E Phase 1 assessment, find a point person out of us to coordinate with your point person.
Probably would make it easier just to move things ahead.
Okay, I just,
Yeah, yeah. So I think we got to see, get some feedback from town council as kind of our first stop before anything else. But then that would, assuming we understand it and accept it, then we move ahead.
okay.
All good?
Next meeting?
Next meeting date would be great. When's good for folks? Should we just do the doodle poll turned out to be much more difficult than we hoped.
That's a lot of people she did.
Let's do it now.
A lot of people.
How about the 6th?
6th of
June.
Monday?
I'm open.
Yeah.
June 6th?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
During the day.
What, June 6th?
June 6th.
Yeah, 30.
Change it?
No,
Kayla will have minutes, and she'll do the agenda. I will post both boards.
Oh, okay. Oh, I understand.
Mr. Secretary, do you have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
I have a second? All those in favor?
I didn't know we were already at that stage.
Guys, motion to adjourn. Aye. All those in favor? Motion passes.
This is making up for tomorrow.
This is longer than Middleton.
Yeah, it's like minutes.
6:30, right?
I know you said ideas are a dime a dozen, but I think like a sports complex, like, you know how the big garage?
Caitlin, thanks everybody, thanks for
Like a
making this
tennis
work.
bubble,
Maybe there's hours.
you know, a soccer bubble,
Yeah, we can do it.
lacrosse bubble, like something indoor.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Colleen. This is great.
Bigger picture, Mark, is.
Oh, sure. And if that slate roof is modified, I mean, after 100 years, they don't last, but they're killer to replace.